a blue marble perspective, where there's both good news and bad news, pessimism and optimism out there, things that are looking up and things that are not looking so good. And some of what I want to do is talk about the context for what's been emerging in evaluation and in the world around blue marble evaluation. And it was a year ago that the book launched. We're very appreciative of the support, especially from the McKnight Foundation that has provided support for the website and for the network and for this series of webinars and the blogs that we've been doing. We celebrated the 1-year anniversary of the launch of the website and the book on November 27th. Some of you were a part of that. And so today we're going to do a more substantive review around beginning with some of the context issues. The context domain is one of the areas of competency for evaluators. In identifying the competencies that evaluators are supposed to have that the American Evaluation Association has adopted, one of those is our appreciation of context. And that's one of the places where blue marble evaluation is clearly located, is taking a picture of what's going on, big picture, zooming in on our own areas of expertise and location, looking both long-term, medium-term, and short-term, and connecting the global and the local. And these have been ongoing principles of blue marble evaluation as a way of providing a context. The AEA competence say that the competent, context-sensitive evaluator attends to systems issues within context. And we'll look at some of what that means. Just this week, I posted a blog with Kim van der Wert on perspectives on precedents. We've been hearing about how 2020 has been an unprecedented year, the most important election in American history. The hype is fairly free-flowing. And so Kim and I had a dialogue that you'll find on the website about the way in which pandemics from a colonial and Native American and historical perspective have been with us, unfortunately, for a long time, on and off. And that, in a sense, every year is unique and unprecedented in its own way. So we're going to look at some of the ways in which the challenges of our time link back and the ways in which our field has been developing. This year, the AEA theme was spotlighting evaluators and evaluation. And I did a presentation on utilization-focused evaluation in 45 years, in 45 minutes, which provides the context for blue marble evaluation. Really comes from the work on utilization-focused evaluation that led to developmental evaluation, that led to principles-focused evaluation, that led to blue marble evaluation. And that context becomes important because we're continuing to frame blue marble evaluation as a particular form of use that's principles-based and developmental. And so these are interconnected together. Nothing demonstrates that better than the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. Pablo Vadera, who you'll hear from shortly, has been working as the world's first blue marble evaluator for the Global Alliance for the Future of Food. And they have incorporated within a utilization-focused evaluation framework, developmental evaluation, principles-focused evaluation, and blue marble evaluation as an interdependent comprehensive approach to evaluation. And that helps us set the context for one of the emergent changes in the year has been this connection between blue marble evaluation and developmental evaluation, which has changed significantly the nature of developmental evaluation. In the original book that came out in 2011, identified 5 purposes for developmental evaluation in the context of complexity and innovation: ongoing development and adaptation, especially for innovation programs; preformative evaluation, that is helping generate new innovations, new ideas, new programs; contextual adaptation, adapting principles to new contexts; humanitarian emergencies, where situation analysis, needs assessment, implementation, design, evaluation are all happening simultaneously; and major systems transformation and change. This year, one of the first blogs I did on March 23rd was about the evaluation implications of the coronavirus and the global health in pandemic, and opened that blog by saying that evaluation plans and designs must now be adapted, and that all evaluators now become developmental evaluators. That the pandemic, the changes that were generated by that, moved into a complex dynamic system where both programs, projects, initiatives, all kinds were having to do what was being called pivoting, and evaluation had to pivot. What that led to was 5 new developmental evaluation purposes that I'll be publishing early in the new year that go beyond developmental evaluation for innovation: pivoting to adapt to survive crisis, evaluating networks and collaborations, conceptualizing and evaluation transformation, capacity development in a Blue Marble context, and developing and adapting evaluation itself. So the changes in developmental evaluation really come out of the Blue Marble applications of principles-focused evaluation. And these interconnections are an important part of understanding the relationships that are core to Blue Marble thinking, how things are interconnected. So early in the new year, we'll be publishing a 5th edition of utilization-focused evaluation. I'm co-authoring with Charmaine, and a major addition to the new edition, coming full circle, is Blue Marble evaluation and the implications of Blue Marble evaluation for utilization-focused evaluation, the influence direction moving in that other direction. Also in the new year, and already published online, is an article on evaluation criteria for evaluating transformation that extends the Blue Marble thinking into comparing the traditional OECD DAC criteria that are dominant internationally for project evaluation of relevance, effectiveness, efficiency, impact, coherence, sustainability, where sustainability means continuity of a project or program's outcomes, to a set of new transformation criteria that the transformation is actually transformational, transformation fidelity. It's understood from a complex systems framing. We look at the full costs, both positive and negative, in an initiative, a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion, adaptive sustainability, not just continuity, and this notion of interconnectedness, that we are able to see the ways in which things affect each other. Now, I want to spend a little time on that in the context of evaluation and the global pandemic, the way in which we've been dealing with the coronavirus this year. Take you back to this graphic that started our experience with the pandemic, of flattening the curve. Carl Bergstrom at the time said this graph is changing minds, and by changing minds, it is saving lives. And the whole purpose of the flattening the curve was not to overwhelm the health system. How's that worked out? So we're learning and continuing to deal with these issues, even as we begin to look at having the vaccine. And so flattening the curve turned into dealing with the pandemic more directly. Now we're in preparation for the real big challenge of our time, the climate change, the climate emergency, and extracting lessons from the coronavirus for the global climate emergency, which continues then to connect not only with that, but with the social justice uprising. I'm coming to you from Minnesota, where George Floyd was killed, and that has led us into a resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement and an attention to systemic racism in a way that it hasn't been a direct focus before. Bringing systems thinking into racism, the nature of racism, the dimensions of racism, and the systems changes that become a part of that. This connects with the work that's emerged in evaluation on systems thinking. I think that we have a lot to offer here, not just within a US context, but a global context about how to think in systems terms, look at interrelationships, perspectives, boundaries, and dynamics. A important publication that came out of the Stanford Innovation Review looked at the water of systems change, changing policies, practices, resource flows, relationships and connections, power dynamics, mental models. Most systems theorists agree that mental models are foundational drivers of activity in any system. Changing mental models often means challenging power structures that have defined influence and shaped those models historically and in the present. And so systemic racism, structural inequality, institutional injustice become part of the larger framing within the Blue Marble context. And I'm going to share with you a particular way in which the framing of these issues has emerged in the United States context for that I think has implications for the SDGs, for all of what it is that we measure in evaluation. This comes in the US context from the issue of affirmative action in universities in particular, but for all kinds of programs, affirmative action has to do with correcting historical injustices and affirmatively providing opportunities to correct those historical injustices. And it's when we engage in targeting from a SMART goals point of view, we're looking at creating the changes that we want to see happen. And I mentioned this because in the current context, as Joe Biden is announcing his senior appointments that have to be approved by Congress, what this brought up for me was the case of Lonnie Grenier, who was nominated to be the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights in 1993. And Clinton had to abandon her nomination because she was an advocate of quotas for affirmative action. Quotas mean that you have not just targets, but there are consequences for not meeting those targets. She was dubbed by the conservative press the Quota Queen. Quota Queen is a negative term that relates to what was called in the 70s the welfare queen, people who were supposedly living high on the hog from welfare. And so a quota queen was someone who was advocating that there ought to be regulations around affirmative action. Affirmative action regulations provide that goals serve as targets reasonably attainable by means of applying every good faith effort to make all aspects of the entire affirmative action program work, and that goals may not be rigid and inflexible quotas, which must be met. In other words, they didn't really want to be accountable for affirmative action targets. They're nice things to say that they're aiming at, but there'd be no consequences for not meeting the targets. And the US Supreme Court upheld this distinction. Affirmative action as a practice was partially upheld by the Supreme Court in 2003, when in the same year, in another case, they ruled that quotas
were unconstitutional. You couldn't have targets with consequences. And yet we have all kinds of quotas. Since 1921, the US has had immigration quotas. We have quotas on how many fish you can catch, what you can hunt. There are farming quotas, milk production quotas, oil quotas. There are police departments that have traffic and arrest quotas, sometimes legally, sometimes not. Um, and so historically, the issue of racial quotas has been a matter of how seriously affirmative action can set targets that are meaningful. In just October of this year, this continues around the Trump administration, um, uh, bringing suit against several Eastern elite colleges for, they believe, having too tight of targets for affirmative action. Meanwhile, Lonnie Grenier has reframed affirmative action to what she calls confirmative action. She's been active in civil rights and higher education, coining the term confirmative action to reconceptualize issues of diversity, fairness, and affirmative action. The process of confirmative action, she says, ties diversity to the admissions criteria for all students, whatever their race, gender, or ethnic background, including people of color, working class whites, and even children of privilege, confirming our diversity. And I go through this in some depth because language so matters. It's part of this language of the year being unprecedented. It's part of the way in which we hype what things are and how things get talked about. Systemic racism becoming a part of that. The Trump administration has prohibited the language of systemic racism to be used in the federal government and has eliminated anti-racism training. And we are at an inflection point on those things. So systemic racism is not just about disparities. Those are the results of systemic racism, not the racist system itself. And it can't just be dismissed as a social construction because it has real consequences, the systemic nature of racism in each culture and country and political system around the world, where we see elements of white supremacy culture, preferring quantity over quality, worship of the written word, that progress represents bigger and more, either or thinking, perfectionism, defensiveness, power hoarding, paternalism, individualism, objectivity. These themes that have been central to evaluation are part of what Blue Marble evaluation is addressing, as the evaluation profession itself has been addressing this. And because of our shortness of time, I'm not going to read these complete quotes to you, but to let you know that the profession is very much dealing with decolonizing evaluation, and that's one of the challenges for us to think in Blue Marble terms, is to, with evaluation indigenous, with culturally responsive evaluation, with eval youth, is to bring these diverse perspectives into our work. And that's what we've seen happen a great deal this year. My own experience of our Blue Marble network is epitomized by engaging with diverse perspectives from around the world about these important issues of our time. At the opening plenary session at the American Evaluation Association, a session called Measuring Love, one of the major themes that came out of that session was, I don't know whether to value what you know until I know what you value. And so the valuing of diversity, of sustainability, of our criteria and principles represented by Blue Marble evaluation becomes core to how we engage with this. And looking at interconnectedness momentum, the way in which things are related together, these become Blue Marble evaluation questions. Evaluate whether, how, and to what extent interconnections among people, networks, institutions, ideas, and movements are deepened and enhanced to support, nurture, catalyze, and accelerate transformational trajectories. Evaluate whether, how, and to what extent dysfunctional and constraining interconnections are disrupted and broken to liberate positive transformational energy. And with that context, I want to to turn to one of the things that has particularly struck me at this point, and then we're going to hear from Glenn and Pablo. And it has to do with the work that's emerging around connecting what's going on in the Blue Marble with investments, with finance. A lot has been happening here, and we've done some of this work with our webinars. We had a webinar with the Investment Integration Project where we looked at transforming the financial sector with an eye to Blue Marble evaluation. That session was in July. We did a session with R3.0 on redesign, resilience, and regeneration, thresholds of transformation, that included looking at a number of blueprints that they have been working on a principles approach to reporting that spurs the emergence of a green, inclusive, and open economy, laying the foundations for future-ready reporting, data integration, contextualization, and activation for multi-capital accounting, new business models, integrated business model design for catalyzing regenerative and distributive economies, transformation journey program, a sustainable finance blueprint, a value cycles blueprint, the role of government and multinationals in transformation, and currently working on an educational transformation blueprint. And what this comes together around is just this week, Sir Ronald Cohen has put out an advanced copy of his book that's coming out on reshaping capitalism to drive real change. This book is going to get a lot of attention, is already getting a lot of attention. He has been a part of working to bring accountability to the corporate and finance worlds around issues of racism, diversity, and sustainability. He founded a financial firm when he was 26 years old, a global private equity firm that now manages more than $50 billion. And he talks about how throughout his career, he was concerned about global sustainability, about issues of equity, and he documents the ways in which our inequalities have grown, our challenges to sustainability have grown. And he has created an impact-weighted accounting system that is getting widely advocated and adopted by companies and businesses and finance firms to actually measure the extent to which financial investments and businesses are addressing issues of equity and sustainability. The final piece I would call to your attention here, again, just this week, is that Barron's Financial Magazine ran a special section in which they asked 12 investors, scholars, and CEOs of companies what they saw for the future post-pandemic. And I've been tracking these kinds of investment journals for some time to see what issues they're raising. What was extraordinary here is that all of these independently, these very influential business and finance people focused on both equity and sustainability, all emphasized the importance of China, and all acknowledged the need for systems transformation. I was especially intrigued by the notion that we're looking at the interconnectedness in those frameworks of economic, social, and environmental issues, of people, planet, and profit, and of true cost accounting for what it costs to produce things like food, that this strikes me as a major shift in the way in which people in the private sector, in the public sector, in the nonprofit sector, in evaluation in this year have begun to take seriously and together the interconnection between equity and sustainability and the future of our planet. I'm going to come back at the very end and say a few words about the future
a bit more about what that is. We'll hopefully have a little chance to interact. But I'm going to bring on now Glenn to talk about. Glenn has been one of our fellow travelers on this work, and I invited him to share some of his reflections about what's been going on. So, and then Pablo, our first World's Blue Marble Evaluator, and we're going to close out with some words from Nikki, and then I'll come back on and to tell you about some of what's up if we can get through all that. So Glenn? Charmaine, are you there? Can you unmute?
You should be able to unmute now.
Aha,
Yeah.
that is a very effective tool, Charmaine. There's a
I'm
lot
on
of people.
I'm on it, you guys. I'm working on it.
There's a lot of people in this world that would like to have that power. But well done. Michael, incredible, and just want to recognize your amazing leadership. Sine qua non, without which nothing. So thank you. It's really absolutely amazing with all the work you do. And greetings, everyone. This is really quite a crowd on this Zoom bombing day, which is really incredible. But let me just pick up a little bit where Michael left off, and I'm going to attempt a screen sharing process. So yes, a little bit of reflections on 2020. I'm going to try to be brief. There's a lot to reflect upon, not the least of which is the amazing work of Michael and Charmaine, the OECD DAC criteria, the update of the utilization focused evaluation, and just this remarkable, just pushing the envelope, exploring the horizons of what's possible. But I come to you from Portland, Maine. This is, I go back to 10 generations, and this is land where my ancestors took advantage of broken treaty promises. And I continue to privilege from these broken treaty promises. And this is a reality that's central to our work. This is a blue marble hub that we've created in Portland, Maine, and it's focused on the blue economy and also the green shoots of systems change. How do we see these transformation systems that are emerging around us? So for those of you on the East Coast or those who are visiting once travel becomes an opportunity, we welcome you. So I'd like to just begin with a little reflection on transformative engagement principle in Blue Marble, engaging consistent with the magnitude, direction, and speed of transformations. And it's very much about moving at the speed of trust in this work. So just wanted to say that it was literally a year ago that we conceptualized an idea of a meta working group with 4 major global working groups, and the consensus was a resounding yes. So on April 22nd, we launched a transformation systems mapping and analysis working group, and that working group has now over 150. This is an image taken or created in August with 135 people, but now it's increased to 150 people from over 30 countries. And it's an incredible opportunity to really help see what's possible in terms of bringing people together. And I think that interconnectedness momentum is extremely strong. And how do we better see the networks we're in? Well, one tool is a social systems map that we've been developing through the work of Christine Capra and Greater Than the Sum, which has been an extraordinarily powerful tool that we've been developing, literally writing code to help further develop this mapping process. But it's ways to see our work streams. We now have 13 work streams and 2 new ones that I'll mention in just a moment. But it's these incredible work streams with several on the call are actually part of these work streams and conveners or fellows on this. And it's asking the question, how do we better think through the power of mapping in new ways? So one of the ways of doing this is sort of to see ourselves, but the power of the social systems mapping allows us to see the momentum, as Michael referred to it, the interconnectedness momentum. So in Q2, our network looked like this. then in Q3 this, in Q4 like this. And I very much encourage you, if anyone's interested in joining and being part of this working group, let me know. We'll connect you. And the way you actually join this working group is to engage with the map. So that's the portal. So I just want to announce two wonderful new work streams that are part of this, led by Peter Jones at OCAD University in Canada, and Steve Waddell, the great leader of the SDG Transformations Forum, bringing together ideas around this concept, as Michael alluded to, the importance of linking finance and systems change around the next economies, thinking about what's coming after the COVID pandemic and how do we actually rethink and bounce beyond what is currently happening. Also very delighted to announce the emerging work stream of decolonizing systems mapping that'll be led by Melanie Goodchild of the Turtle Island Institute and Dan Carpenter at Waterloo University. An absolutely fascinating vision. They've created a wisdom lodge that's online, a virtual online wisdom lodge that will be convening folks from around the world on how we better think about and act upon ways of decolonizing the process of mapping, which for so many years, mapping has been a power over, not a decolonizing and liberating structure. So this is critically important work. But also want to mention another principle, the principle of acting globally. And this is idea of that we must be contextually sensitive and grounded in the interactions between local and global processes and scales of change. So as Michael showed, that important power of we have the ability, we must get good at looking at the forever small and to the sectoral, the silos, but also the specifics, and looking at the forever far away. But there's also this other area that we would say is critically needed, and we're calling that the macroscope. It's that in between of seeing the systems within which we live. And when we apply it to a bioregional approach, we can actually see systems together in new ways. And again, looking at them from an intended uses and users perspective, look in terms of spatial scales as well as temporal scales, and think about how do we focus, and critically important, how do we do it with both eyes. And this refers to the MIMA framework created by Elder Albert Marshall and his wife Merdina regarding two-eyed seeing, the importance of having one eye through Western lens and another eye through indigenous wisdom. It's a critical art. Someone like Melanie Goodchild at Turtle Island Institute is absolutely genius at this two-eyed seeing work. And what's critical about this bioregional work, there's so much we don't know. Yes, there are things we do know, but it's this voyage of discovery that's so important. Working at the edges, seeing the whole, paying attention to the systems that we're within, this mapping for vitality, prototyping, learning, failing, collaborating, establishing baselines, the blue marble baselining process, storytelling so critically, and understanding differential power dynamics. This is really important because we're applying it to places around the world, everywhere from the Gulf of California to Ecuador, to the Chesapeake, to Costa Rica, Panama, Nicaragua, and the western region of Ghana, in the Caribbean, also in the south of Florida, as well as a major focus here in the Gulf of Maine, as well as a northern arc, the northern periphery of the North Atlantic, places like Iceland, and a major focus on areas of UK, particularly Scotland. This is going to be the destination for COP26. And our intention is to put blue marble evaluation and bioregioning and this use of the macroscope on the global map at COP26. So some of the things we're working on here locally, and this has been a big year for this work, is understanding what is going on here. We know from a biophysical perspective, this system is warming faster than 99% of the world's oceans. However, we have very little understanding of the governance response to ecosystem change. And we have a boundary, a border that cuts right through. So you've got two nations as well as tribal communities throughout these areas. So there's huge issues and huge opportunities to ask important questions around transformation systems. So one of the things that we've created is a transformation transect, which is basically using an existing road network that goes from the tip of Cape Cod all the way to the tip of Cape Sable, and stationing along the way and focusing our work along this area and drilling in deeply to 3 bioregional areas and applying a blue marble macroscope on this process. So we have a Blue Marble Learning Center, not just here in Portland, but also up at this area, this boundary area, right at the border of US and Canada. And this is ancestral Passamaquoddy homeland, and working closely with the elders there and really thinking new ways of how to apply this work. So it's important that we think about this work and the incredible leadership who what could be a grand pollinator, all the work that he's done, and now with Charmaine and bringing Blue Marble into being. I just want to recognize you, Michael, for this, what I think is giving birth to the era of transformation as we look at the sort of the marking of the evolution of the field of evaluation and really recognizing your role in Blue Marble leadership. So with that, I turn it back to you.
Thank you, Glenn. I appreciate and am honored by your recognition and by everybody on here. We're going to move right to Pablo since our time is short. Pablo, you're up.
Yep.
Our world's first official Blue Marble evaluator with the Global Alliance for the Future of Food.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you all. I will just be brief and just provide a reflection on where I think that things have been moving and opportunities for the next year and many more to come, of course. This is an idea that I borrowed from Senda Ophir in one of our last calls. Senda was referring to the Blue Marble evaluation movement, and I was quite struck and inspired by that idea. For those of you that are aware of agroecology, that's a way of just farming with nature, basically. And agroecology is defined as a science, a practice, and a movement. So a science underpinning all the things that are actually done in the field, and a movement advocating for agroecology as the way to feed us all. And I was thinking that Blue Marble evaluation is actually both of, all of those three. It's a science, it's a practice, and a movement. And I see like clear, outstanding developments on all those three fields. Michael has been going through, some of the articles, blogs being published, the transformation criteria. I think it's a crucial one. All the webinars in the Blue Marble evaluation platform. In the practice side, well, I could tell you a million things about the Global Alliance, but just to tell you a couple of snapshots, just this year, Blue Marble evaluation helped us to define a theory of transformation for the whole Global Alliance and really help us to navigate a tough issue, which was about addressing inclusion more seriously in our work. So that's really great to see. And as a movement, this is a growing community with growing engagement that is even hacked in its meetings. So I think that those three pillars are really promising. The work being developed this year is great, and this put us in a really great position to further develop these in the years to come. The Global Alliance is embracing Blue Marble evaluation quite seriously in all the work. And there are some promising work streams. Glenn has spoke about the TSMA, engagement with the UN Food System Summit, etc. So I really look forward the next year working with you all and developing this marvelous science practice and movement. So over to you, Michael.
Thank you, Pablo. Appreciate both what Pablo and Glenn brings to our social movement and what Nikki Bowman brings to it as she's become active and a supporter. We opened with a prayer to Mother Earth from Nikki, and Nikki, you're on. Charmaine, will you unmute Nikki?
Did you want me to pray or say a few words?
There you are. No, we did the prayer at the opening.
Oh, I have I sort of have a surprise, and I'm sorry that I'm eating lunch here, but this is life. This is life at the office. I've been going back and trying to read the evolution of the MQP and have been dabbling in some of his earlier writings. And I just want to pause here and say that the love of complexity, looking at complexity as a rather than a challenge, as an opportunity, has been amazing. I've been thumbing through. If you haven't had a chance to read the book, Getting to Maybe, it will make you laugh. It will make you cry. It will make you think. There's poetry in there. And I think what Blue Marble seamlessly helps us to do is to Nialagomati, to see us as all connected, as a web in the strand of a web in the a strand in the web of life, as Chief Seattle says. What we do to ourselves, we do to each other. The book talks about operating with a logic and life of their own, giving us permission to feel and to be within this natural system. And if you read the book cover to cover, it even talks about us being on a journey together. And you end up going on that journey and arriving back at yourself, or arriving at some of the things you've always been working on. And that, to me, is the power of the medicine wheel. So I see me a lot in Blue Marble, and Blue Marble in a lot of what I'm taught by my elders. So I'm not sure, if those are all the total comments you wanted, but I have a surprise for you. There's lots of stuff that Michael does on and off the record, and I'll just leave some of our more private and intimate moments to that. He's a very caring community member, but I have something that I'm going to send you. And the good news about being traditional and indigenous is you don't have to hit the stress of December 25th. We have winter solstice, okay? And we do different ceremonies around that. And so on behalf of our community, we're going to be sending this to you. It's a Blue Marble. It's a Blue Marble shirt. It was made especially for Blue Marble. And it was made by one of the best medicine people that I know. Her name is Elizabeth Huntington. She holds the house down. Douglawood. I can't say her Oneida name because I got Lenape words in my mind, but it was made in the spirit of Blue Marble to represent the earth and the sky. And ribbon shirts are very special. They're sacred shirts. They're like ribbon dresses. And so we are gifting this to you on behalf of our indigenous communities here in, around the Great Lakes area, and in particular from Eden and I at BPC. So I wanted to share this with you, and we hope that you love it.
Thank you so much. That's tremendous. I'm deeply touched, Nikki, as always. You're the best. So what we're going to do next year is plan some webinars that can be highly interactive. This has been a lot of one-way kind of webinars. We've covered a lot of content. I got through about a third of what I had hoped to cover today in looking back at the year. But we're going to arrange some more webinars where we can start interacting. There are a lot of people on this call who have a lot of experience and knowledge about this. We want to tap into that and make it more a process where we set up an issue and engage together around that. What I'm going to do to follow up on what Nikki said was coming full circle is I thought with the new year coming on, some of you know I've written some evaluation songs over the years, some lyrics to karaoke songs. And the first one I ever did was for utilization focused evaluation, and it's to the tune of Auld Lang Syne. So I'm going to pull that up as a way of celebrating the Blue Marble anniversary, looking forward to 2021, and invite you each to accompany, sing along if you want. I also want to mention that we've begun a work with the the United Nations Food Systems Summit. Blue Marble Network is going to play a role in that. I'll be tapping into some of you to join us in that, and we'll have more to say about that as we go along. But to close this off, let me invite you to sing along with the hymn to evaluation use, which brings us back to full circle to the beginning of utilization focused evaluation. All evaluations done be useful as they should. They tell us how to separate what is poor from what is good. We gather data near and far to see what we can learn. The findings help us to decide
what to
keep
keep and what to
burn.
burn.
There comes a time for each of us when doubts may give us pause. We wonder what results will show. Will the world see not lost? Be assured there's not to fear.
If fear is what you see,
I'll
let out
guide your
comes
every move.
every
Listen
move.
to
Listen
the
to the
data.
data.
Happy New Year, everyone. Happy Blue Marble New Year. Thank you for being a part of this. And we'll get back together in the new year. Thank you, Charmaine, for reorienting us from the bomb. We'll have that to remember. Thanks to Glenn and Pablo and Nikki for your wonderful surprise. And thanks to all of you for being a part of this Blue Marble community, movement, scholarship, evaluation work. We have a lot to work on next year, and we'll get more interactive in the work that we do together. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.